Welcome, patrons. Have you ever been setting up your world state in the Dragon Age Keep and came across a tab that says The Last Court? Well, that's one of Dragon Age's more experimental minigames in the series, and in my opinion, the most successful one. So let's talk about it. History. The Last Court goes down as one of the few spin-off games not made by BioWare or EA, which I think the only other one was that hack and slash miss we talked about late last year. The game was created by Failbetter Games, a studio that was co-created by Alexis Kennedy, who apparently has done some work on Dragon Age 4, but who knows if that actually kept in the game or not because the game was rebooted in between then. But the company is most known for Sunless Skies and Fallen London, which while I have not played, I have also heard is very good. It was released on November 7th, 2014, which is only 11 days before Dragon Age Inquisition. Interestingly enough, and something I didn't really know until actually researching for this video, was that the game was actually announced by 4 large Dragon Age/BioWare YouTubers at the time. Those 4 being Lady Insanity, GamerMD, Ability Drain, and Scottish Warrior 92. It seems that they were contacted by BioWare to get the chance to play around with the game early and then made a video about it. This caused some of the fan base to be confused apparently, as I saw some comments that thought The Last Court was a fan-made project. I do wonder if BioWare actually heard those complaints, as I can't think of a time where an influencer announced anything official ever again. Another curious thing about the game is that it seems it was marketed as a story of what was going on in Thedas in between Dragon Age 2 and Dragon Age Inquisition. But in reality, the game really centers itself on Seralt, with small hints as what has been happening. Really, if you wanted to know how the world of Thedas has been in between Dragon Age 2 and Inquisition, the books Mass Empire and Asunder really did a much better job at setting it up. The game only really confirms that the problems set up in those books are indeed still problems, with perhaps the added bonus of bringing Corypheus back into the picture, which at the time people didn't know he was actually going to be in Inquisition. Reviews of the game itself tend to be in 2 camps, one loving it, and one that hates it because they can't understand how to play or just hate text adventure games. To throw out my bias, I am in the love it category for reasons I'll explain as we go on. When it was released, there were microtransactions called Dawn. In the game, you had about 20 actions you can do, taking about 20 minutes to refill one action. So if you wanted to do something, but you ran out of actions, you could use Dawn to refill some of your actions. Like most microtransactions, people hated this. I'm not sure if that's because of the price of Dawn, or because it's just a microtransaction, which, to be honest, I have yet to find a price for Dawn, because either way, you are no longer able to purchase it, no matter how hard you try. I first played the game in 2016, and even back then, I was not able to buy Dawn, so the feature has been gone for years now. And even then, I don't miss it. The game plays fine on its own. I should also add that it only takes about 6 hours to completely refresh your actions, which means you can do quite a lot in one day of play. For me, I played twice in preparation for this video. One playing once a day, and another playing as much as I could. In all honesty, I didn't have that many more resources when playing as much as I could, which, granted, may have been because of how I was playing, which I'll get to that later on. But if you only have the time and patience to play once a day, don't worry, you'll be fine. Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of people were confused on how you play this game. I would like to get this out of the way now that this is not going to be a guide, but rather a review of the game. If you are in need of one, I've linked below the guide I remember using the most when I first played and needed help. But I will say that returning to the game, I didn't feel the need to even look up a guide. While I didn't remember much, the game isn't actually that hard to understand, as long as you are willing to accept the unknown and let the game happen. If you have completed the game, which from reading it doesn't matter what ending you got as long as you complete it, Inquisition is affected. You unlock 2 war table missions. Well, it's actually technically 3. There's one starting one, and then it branches out into 2 different ones. And once you complete them, you get the Seralt Glass Decor for Skyhold. There is more to say on the war table missions, but we'll get to that in a bit. The Last Court. Let's start with the gameplay of the game first, because I feel like that will help you to understand the story. The gist of the gameplay is that you are given 3 scenarios of events happening in Seralt when you draw from the deck, and you choose how to complete them with the goal of collecting enough trophies, viands, and secrets to win the objective at the end. For the most part, each card costs 1 action to complete. Along with these scenarios are a few cards that are available at any time. Most of these have to do with resource collections and trading in objects you have earned or actions to gain more trophies, viands, and secrets. Time passes in the game with market days, or when larger events are given to you and you must choose one to do. These generally are the larger storylines of your playthrough and also give you the most rewards. The game takes 7 days in real time to complete. This is not a maximum amount of time, but a minimum. On the last day, the end of the game triggers and you have to use everything you have earned to regain your honor. Something also to note is that the market days don't refresh at the end of the day, but after 24 hours after your last market day. So if you play at the same time every day, it will only take 7 days. But if, like me, you jumped around in the time you played, it could take a little bit longer. You can choose to play as the Huntress or the Scholar. The choice is more than just choosing your gender, as each have their own strengths and weaknesses. Also, at the start of each game, you are able to choose some facts about Geralt, which will determine how high or low a few stats are at the start of the game. As you progress, you have 4 slots to collect companions, and each companion boosts your skills. Obviously, the higher your skill, the better you're going to do in a lot of the scenarios that come your way. So from this description, you should be getting the sense that different people have many different stories, so it's hard to talk about the story of Geralt when so many different things can happen. But despite that, there are a small handful of things that everyone will encounter, so let's start with that. You are the Marquis of Geralt, around 30 years old, and are the descendant of the Shame of Geralt, an apostate-turned-abomination. His name was forgotten, so your great-grandfather is only known as the Shame. What exactly he did to earn that title is never really said, but rather noted that there were a lot of different things that piled up. Either way, Divine Beatrix III stripped the family of their mask, locked the chantry, and called the city shamed, which is almost worse than death in Orlais. At the start of the game, you are given notice that Divine Justini V is coming in 7 weeks and wishes to examine if Geralt should still be shamed. So it is your goal to win her approval. From here, you encounter the Scornful Sorceress. Now, I should say that this game rarely uses names, but rather titles. So, from the description and photo, it's obvious that the Scornful Sorceress is Morrigan. Morrigan comes with a letter from Empress Celine that amounts to a "let me do what I want" card, which the Marquis can either ignore or allow. Either way, Morrigan's goal is to fix up the alluvion that she has brought to Geralt's glassworks, and she will do it with or without your approval. At any time, there is a sealed chantry that you can break into. Breaking into it will cause the Divine to be displeased with you, but upon breaking into it, you will find there is a passage into a woods, and further, an old woman. The old woman, called the Arcaness, is the mage daughter of the Shame and a Chantry's sister, making her your half-great aunt. You can learn about her life and her interaction with the Shame, and there are a few options as to what to do with her. When the Divine comes, there are multiple ways to either impress her or not. The ultimate ending is to win back Geralt's honor, gain your mask back, get commissioned to redo all of the glass in the Grand Cathedral, and get the keys to the Chantry if it's not already been opened. But you can also choose events that lead her to leave without giving you anything. Either way, you get your rewards for Inquisition, and life continues on in Geralt. A problem with talking about this game is that, obviously, there's a lot of things that can happen, and a lot of it's actually very interesting. There's just no possible way to talk about all the little stories in this game, and I have no way of knowing what could come back in the future or if it even will. But with that in mind, I would suggest looking at the Dragon Age wiki. They have pretty much everything archived, and you can read the exact text you would in the game that you have missed on your playthrough. So if I say something that has caught your attention and I don't talk more about it, you can check over there to get the full story. So for now, here are very small summaries of the parts that I thought were relevant to the world of Thedas as we know it. Again, it's possible that something pops up later that was hinted at in this game, or that I even missed something, but for now, this is what I can offer. Carver Hawk can visit Geralt. The game lets you confirm Carver's fate, which dictates what happens when you meet him. If Carver died in Dragon Age 2, it will be an imposter. The Shame summoned a spirit and created a creature called the Horned Knight. He lives in the forest and calls it his domain, summoning other spirits and animals to create a wife and children. The interesting part here is that in one scenario, the Horned Knight can gift the Marquis a bundle of the Shame's writings. In them, he details that he had worked with the Grey Wardens to update the bonds that held Corypheus, which is exactly what Malcolm Hawke had done. This is also hinted at if you chose Carver being a Grey Warden, and he tells you that the Shame had worked for the Wardens. There is a cult of Andraste worshippers who worship a form known as the Masked Andraste. This practice is looked down upon by the Chantry, but allowed. Their leader is the Elegant Abbess, who can be your lover, and after a ritual that I believe has to do with sacrificing a stag to an ancient idol who is claimed to be the Masked Andraste, the woodlands become more bountiful. This Andraste is a hunter, and the idol has a bow carved on her back. The well-read pig farmer is a pig farmer that married well, but more importantly, it seems that she was from Tevinter and part of the Magisterium, and in general is just very bright. I'm not sure if this will actually come into play, but seeing as the next game is set in Tevinter, there is a small chance. So if in Dragon Age 4 you meet a Magister who was once a pig farmer, or a pig farmer that was once a Magister, there's from this game. There is a rumor that the Silent Hunter was once the lover of Empress Celine for one night. Knowing what we do, that Briala has been a long-time lover of the Empress, it's very unlikely that this is true. There are elves in the Tirishan forest that worship the Forgotten Ones and wear a valisthine that is bright red. When they attack your people, they take blood from them and call out to the gods in battle to offer up their kills. There is a cowled visitor that wants to give you a secret to be used and leveraged against the divine. The visitor is a woman who seems to be part of the Seekers and carries a bow. Dragon Age Inquisition. So let's talk about these war table missions. The first one is called Investigate Seralt and is available as soon as you get to Haven. The Inquisition takes an interest in Seralt as it was the last place the Divine visited before coming to the Conclave. As Seralt does have the reputation from the Shame, they want to rule out that the events of the Conclave and Seralt are linked. From this, there are two choices: sending Josephine, who will send an emissary to the Marquis for an investigation, or sending Liliana, who doesn't trust the Marquis and sends a spy to talk to the people of Seralt instead. If you send Josephine, the emissary will remain as an advisor to observe the town, and you unlock the next mission, Search for the Lost in Seralt, once you reach Skyhold. As you have reached Skyhold by this point, you know that Seralt has nothing to do with the death of the Divine, but Josephine was considering letting the emissary remain in Seralt. That is, until a missive came that told the Inquisition that both the emissary and the Marquis were missing after a hunt. The family of the Marquis had sent men to search in the deep woods for both. From here, you can send Liliana or Calwyne. Liliana sends a few spies, and while they go slower, they can be quiet in searching for the both of them. Once completed, you get a letter that a strange hut was found in the deep woods, with both the Marquis and the emissary playing chess together. When the spies were spotted, the emissary fled, the spies reporting that his eyes were inhuman. He was unable to be captured. The Marquis thanks the Inquisition for the rescue, but was unable or unwilling to say what happened to the emissary. Something interesting to note is that either by design or by accident, this is the only option that lists the Marquis as male. Calwyne sends soldiers, which are quicker than spies, and once completed you find the emissary in the deep woods, but not the Marquis. The emissary was shaken and unable to speak, but led the soldiers to a strange hut, where it was obvious that whoever had lived there had escaped. The soldiers also found many medicinal herbs in the woods, which you get as a reward. If you sent Liliana in the original War Table mission, her agents begin to spy in Seralt, and you unlock the next mission, Quell Unrest in Seralt, again once you reach Skyhold. And again, thanks to Criffy showing up, you know that Seralt is innocent, but there are talks of a revolt, and while the Marquis is trying to quell the chaos, it might not be enough. If you send Josephine on this mission, she sends a representative from the Inquisition who can spread the good that they have done for the world in hopes that it calms the fears of the people. Once completed, it's noted that the emissary had little effect, and they leave without doing much. If you send Calwyne, he sends his troops. It makes people feel more secure, and it's noted they are scared of the deep woods for reasons unknown. The Marquis is also pleased. Discussion. So first, let's talk about the art. The art of the game I actually kind of find endearing because it's basically all recycled concept art. The Silent Hunter is Samson, with Meredith crowned on the body of the Envy Demon Calwyne concept. The Dour Lordship is just the first draft concept of Dorian, and many of the other characters can be seen in both Dragon Age 2 and Inquisition as just random portraits of people. For many of these, I don't think the Dragon Age Inquisition and Dragon Age 2 portraits are actually of those people. I don't think that Kindly Knight was that popular in Thetis, but it's fun to recognize where the art came from. There are two story bits that come up in this game that I want to focus quickly on. The first being that there are elves who worship the Forgotten Ones still running about. We have little information on them after that, but it's interesting that they have a real focus on blood and sacrificing humans. That seems like a detail that could come back in the series, but just hasn't yet. Another point is the masked Andraste. From what I experienced in game and read on the wiki, it almost seems that the idol they used for her was found and not made by a cult. If that is the case, it's possible that the idol is not Andraste at all. And considering that there are elves in the forest that worship the Forgotten Ones, it's possible this could have been theirs. Another option is that because the idol is a hunter with a bow, it could be an old idol of Andrul. After all, they cover her face, which would let someone know if she was an elf or not. Andrul also has ties with sacrifice, which is one of the things they do in a ritual for the masked Andraste, so I wonder if the Shame was playing around with the elven gods. Let's also talk about the Dragon Age Inquisition War Table missions. Obviously, one is much more exciting than the other. What happened to the Marquis and the Emissary? Did the Horn Knight get involved? If you follow his questline, he grows moss into the eyes and mouths of those he chooses to serve him, so perhaps the emissary got in his way? At the same time, the Acorness used to live in a hut in the woods, so it seems they were at her place, but it is possible to kill her in the game. Did she not die? Did she somehow do something to the Marquis? If she did, what about in games where the Marquis had the Arcanist live with them and be kind to her? Does she betray them? Either way, one of the biggest things to take away from the last court is that the woods surrounding Seralt have something bigger going on than what we know. If it's not what the Shame did, like the Horned Knight and his apostate daughter, it's something to do with the elves. And one more thing I want to say, I mentioned earlier that this is so far the most successful Dragon Age minigame that has come out, and I just want to expand on that. Dragon Age to me has been about storytelling, but more than that, it's about people. It's about people who have made mistakes and experienced trauma and then affecting the world around them because of it, for good or ill. And this is what the last court does so well. It's not only about you trying to save your town's honor because your great-grandfather messed up so bad, it's also about learning who he was. That all he wanted was to make Seralt great and it turned out horribly. In the end, you two really have the same goal, and this is your chance to go down another path, to learn from his mistakes. On top of that, the game wants you to make mistakes as well. I played 2 playthroughs to prep for this video, one as the Scholar and once as the Huntress. The Huntress I played was bold and took chances. She opened the Chantry, hunted in the deep woods, allowed the dowered lordship in, and dealt with the Horned Knight. And I got a better story from it, and I earned Seralt's honor and the mask. The Scholar I played safe, took no chances, shied away from magic and the bazaar, and in the end, the game was kinda boring, and it ended up barely earning Seralt's favor back with no mask at all. This, unlike any other spin-off game in the series, gets what Dragon Age is and does it well. If anything, I think it adds something in that many of the main games don't, rewarding you for taking chances with a more interesting story. So for that, if you haven't had a chance to go play The Last Court, consider this video a glowing recommendation to do so. And that, my dear patrons, is all that I have on The Last Court. Do you still have lingering questions, proof that I'm wrong, comments about your own fan theory? Feel free to tweet me at @Gildathon on Twitter or send a PM to user Gillanon on Reddit. Dara Shiral.